Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Podcana. Today we have a Ruby Amethyst deck tech, of course, with Grandmaster Moyen and fellow hosts of the podcast. Moyen, can you give me a quick background on the progression of Ruby Amethyst, specifically in set 2, now into set 3, and where you think the deck generally lies in this metagame?
I think it always used to be the deck that has just decent matchups all around. At the start of the set, it actually wasn't doing too hot until it managed to adapt, which is also a common story for Ruby Amethyst, because it was struggling to deal with the green 3-cost Ursula, and it managed to adapt to that. It now plays 4 Rafikis as 1-drops and Pinocchios to be able to banish Ursula before it even sings a song. And then also, in general, it was already pretty good at dealing with locations, but it is even more so good at dealing with locations now, because now people are playing, the default lists are playing 2 fishhooks to help with that. You're playing 3 to 4 crabs that also help dealing with locations. Playing 4 Rafiki inherently helps you deal with locations. So it just adapted to the meta very well. Now it's again one of the best decks that has a good matchup spread all around, and especially beats up on the best counter to blue steel. And the best counter to blue steel is red blue. I think red blue's worst matchup by far is Ruby Amethyst.
It's interesting how we saw the Ruby Amethyst list adapt early in set 3 to go sort of ultra tempo to try to deal with locations, try to deal with some of the Amethyst Emerald decks that were showing up. And now it is still very much a tempo deck where it's trying to play the board early, get control of board, make sure that locations are not getting out of control, maybe play its own locations. But it has added more controlling elements to itself and added some more top end as well. So it feels more reminiscent of the old Ruby Amethyst decks, which I've really enjoyed. I agree with you. I think the matchups for red is fantastic. It is just a great all-around deck. And I do think we'll see more blue-red come into the metagame in the next coming weeks. We've seen big streamers pick it up, and like you said, this is that deck's worst matchup by far. Anyway, let's talk about this deck's general game plan, what it's trying to do, both macro and micro. We can start a little bit with the mulligan, usually how you're trying to open. Obviously, it changes matchup to matchup, but there are some specifics, right? You do want to open with some 1-drops and potentially get your Madam Mim snakes or your Madam Mim foxes down early to be able to contest board. But Moyen, I know I just kind of said it myself, but talk to me a little bit about this deck's early game plan or sort of general game plans and mulligans.
So most importantly, you really want that 1-drop into preferably 2-cost Madam Mim. And then it doesn't really matter what you do on 3. You just want to spend your ink on 3, optimally on something that can sing Friends on the Other Side on the next turn. Then you already have so many cards. Still, if you're not playing against a real deck, you like to follow it up with a rabbit, and then you can really control the game from there. Go either with a Maui to control the board on 5, or you drop your Hawkins plus location. And that's really what the deck wants to do.
So what this deck is trying to do, I think from sort of a macro perspective, is it's trying to contest board early, get that 1-drop, play out your Madam Mims, which are overstated 2-drops and 3-drops. Very much contest board through combat. That's why you see the additions of the Merlin crabs, and then ultimately out card advantage the opponent through things like Friends of the Other Side, Merlin rabbit, etc. And then of course it has its own aggressive package in the form of Jim Hawkins, and then once you get to the higher ranks, things like Maleficent. It gets more powerful as the game goes on. I would say some of the potential weaknesses of this deck can be in the early game, but it's drastically mitigated by the amount of 1-drops that are now included in that list, and of course the Madam Mim package, which is, in my opinion, at least in the early part of the set 3 metagame, if you're not playing steel, you need to be playing some very powerful sort of characters on the 1 through 4 turns, and the best things that sort of meet that criteria is the Madam Mim package at this point. So that's why we're able to play Amethyst and Ruby and still have a very, very powerful deck in this metagame. In terms of new cards and some standout cards in the list, you did mention Maui's Fishhook, you did mention Rafiki, we have some Kuzcos in there for card advantage, Pinocchios to deal with some pesky threats that exist on board that your opponent will potentially not be exerting until they have a massively beneficial effect, things like the Ursula, the double sing songs. There is one card here in particular, which is the Sorceress Spellbook. It is a one of. Want to talk to me about that card in particular?
I think it was already kind of okay at the beginning of set 3, but with the meta slowing down, it has become stronger and stronger as time went on. Also, it's just the entire progression that this deck went through. It started off by playing 4 Jim Hawkins and usually 6 locations, but then you started playing Pinocchios and Fishhooks as different decks, but that slowed game down so much that a lot of games were going into this grindy phase where you're trying to out-resource your opponent and out-control your opponent. And Jim Hawkins can feel lackluster in these situations, so that's why most most people have decided to cut down to 2 Jim Hawkins and 4 locations. So you go less all in on this Jim Hawkins idea, but at least all your locations are inkable, and Jim Hawkins, of course, inkable as well. And I know I've been talking about Spellbook enough. I've gone on this entire rant, but this entire development also meant that now you can quest a lot less because you get punished by Fishhook, for example, in these grindier games. And it slowed the game down so much that the one way you can consistently still get lore in these grindy games is Spellbook, and it puts so much pressure on your opponent that it can slowly but surely win you games. It's an absolute mirror killer as well.
Absolutely. There is a part of me, a small part of me, but it does exist, that is a bit sad that we will be releasing this deck tech with the Spellbook on it, because right now the Ruby Amethyst mirrors on ladder are a bit free because the gameplay has slowed down a lot since week 0 and week 1, and particularly in the Ruby Amethyst mirrors, and that Spellbook is almost an inevitable sort of win condition. It is very hard for your opponent to beat, and these Ruby Amethyst mirrors, they're either decided, I think, in the first few turns, whether your opponent is able to control board, drop an early Jim Hawkins, and just sort of snowball an advantage. It's not as likely as it used to be, and then after that, they become extremely grindy. Both players are bouncing Merlin rabbits constantly back and forth, drawing your friends on the other side, and just becomes this card advantage attrition battle. And then you have the Spellbook, and it's very hard for your opponent to sort of out-tempo you and get past that Spellbook because they have no way to deal with it in the Ruby Amethyst mirror. So a small part of me is sad, but I think it's a natural development. People are going to start including this card in their list. It does get hit by some other cards in the metagame, like Rise of the Titans, and you might think, oh, Rise of the Titans, all these steel decks, they're running that for locations, and this just hits my Spellbook. It's not a bad trade for you. It's a 1-for-1 trade, right? They cast Rise of the Titans, they can't sing it. They hit your Spellbook, which costs 3 ink. Titans cost 3 ink. Spellbook is, of course, uninkable, so this may be a bit of a beneficial trade for them, but ultimately, it's not that much of a downside that you should be cutting this card at this point. Last thing I want to mention about this list is there are a lot of sort of, I don't know, what 2 ofs and 3 ofs. I think that at this stage in the Lorcana metagame, you should look at these sort of non-4 ofs in the deck and just think about them as a bit flexible in regards to the metagame, right? As the metagame shifts, or just your local metagame, whether it's at your local armor, or your local events, or just your local metagame, whether it's gold, silver, platinum, master, whatever you're facing, feel free to sort of tweak some of these numbers up and down a little bit, because the meta at this point is very much in flux, and that's why you see a deck list that is not reminiscent of just all 4 ofs. So yeah, feel free to tweak.
It's just Ruby Amethyst is extremely flexible in these slots, and you can build it. You can just fine tweak it to specifically what you want to be beating, and it's one of the best parts about the deck.
Yes, and last thing I want to hit is the macro number. So this is 46 inkables, 14 uninkables, 43 amethyst cards, 17 ruby cards, almost a mono amethyst deck. It is 45 characters, 8 songs, 4 locations, and 3 items. Relatively low uninkable count for a ruby amethyst deck, so that does increase your equity to mulligan towards those 1-drops and maybe not be forced to keep inkable cards, which is something you may have had to do in the past. Most notably in set 1, we were running 21 uninkables, but just keep those numbers in mind as you play the deck. Anyway, without further ado, let's hop into
go
ahead.
Okay, I've just one thing that's because most people are. I think we need to talk about the one drops just a little bit. Because most Rafiki, okay, everyone agrees makes sense against locations and Ursula, but a lot of people are then playing 1/3s if they want to play Thief, and that's fine. But I think followers, Chernabog's followers, are completely underrated 1-drop. They enable you to spend your first turn on playing 1-drops without running out of cards, because you can just replace them after they quest. In the late game, they're the best 1-drop in the game, because against you can just play them out and cycle them, whereas other 1-drops would be completely terrible. But also, I think a very important point is the Ruby Amethyst mirror. One of the best things in the mirror you can be doing is you go Rafiki on 1 on the play, and then no matter what your opponent plays, you Pinocchio it, you value trade, and they can't drop their Mim, they don't have a good Pinocchio, and you can leverage that tempo advantage to win the game. But the only 1-drop against which Rafiki doesn't survive after you Pinocchio it to exert it is Chernabog's follower, so it also has that upside there, and I think the card is a bit underrated in Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah, and in classic Podcana fashion, I know we try to keep these deck techs very, very short, but I do have one other thing to say, and that's just, I mean, in combination with these 1-drops, Merlin Crab is super, super powerful. Like, I believe it's a crab life out there at this point. Often, so in the past, often what I was doing was, you know, I would bounce back a 1-drop, play something like a Madam Mim Fox. My opponent had exerted their sort of their 3/3 or something like that, and then I trade 1-for-1, like 3 cost for 3 cost or 3 cost for 4 cost. Not that crazy. Often now, if my 1-drop is sitting on the battlefield, whether I had a couple in hand, didn't have the snake to follow up, my Merlin Crab gives me so much equity to trade my 1-drop for a 2-drop or 3-drop, something like a Mr. Smee. It just happens so often, because you're, at least at this stage in the metagame, I find my opponents often expecting something like a Madam Mim Fox for the trade, which is a beneficial trade for them. They should be questing into that, expecting that. But when the Merlin crowd comes down and it goes 1 drop for 3 drop, it can just be so freaking powerful, especially in the world we live in, which is just a Mr. Smee fiesta at this point. I love this card. I love the Merlin crowd. All right, with that, let's get into the gameplay. All right, so looking at the mulligan here, we're playing on the hardcore ranked ladder, so we don't know what our opponent is playing. So we have more of a general mulligan here, going for the 1 drop. Anything else you're thinking about keeping? Definitely don't lose the mulligan. OG Pixelborn bug.
Yeah, it's probably like Friends is the other consideration, but without it too, I don't want to. Rafiki is the like baseline better 1-drop, especially going first, because it curves a lot better into Pinocchio. Going second, there's actually a reason to keep followers, just in case you get Pinocchio, if it's the mirror. We definitely don't need 3 goats.
Yeah.
They're like our late game card. And one of them is nice on 4, but...
How do you feel as the Ruby Amethyst player when you perform a mulligan like that and don't pick up 2-drop or 3-drop Madam Mim? Do you feel like you're in a bit of a harder position, or is it all good?
No, it's definitely a lot harder. I was still hoping that I was going to draw into one, because we play 4 Mims, 2 Kuzco, 2 Pinocchio, but without it, it hurts for sure.
Yeah. So
I think against most gray decks, Fishhook is not as important, so I'm thinking I might ink it, yeah.
Yeah, I think the only deck that I really like Fishhook against is Blue Steel, because the McDuck Manor is 9 health, and the Fishhook
Yeah.
plus Maui clears the McDuck.
I think in the mirror and against Blue Steel, it's very good.
Rise of the Titans is
Then
interesting. I think that tells us it's not green steel, actually. Our opponent has literally only shown us steel so far. I think we can reasonably rule out green steel with Rise. I'd be surprised if Rise of the Titans was in a green steel deck, but you never know.
Also, like with having such little knowledge, I feel like I'm just popping this before it can get let the Storm Rage down, just in case.
Yeah, I think that's smart.
And then I think I only keep 1 goat. Which will hurt us in the late game, because we only have access to... Like, we'll probably play 1 on 4 and then only have access to 1 goat late game, but that's just the nature of this hand. These goats are not very good in the early game. Except 1.
Okay, so we're against Steel Amethyst. That's
okay, they're threatening turn 4 Tinkerbell. They went Robin Hood, Smee, Tinker. So by singing Friends, maybe they can get a Tinkerbell trade-off. Something to consider. But also if they take that trade, then the Tinkerbell is already exerted and I'm happy then. So definitely singing Friends.
Yeah, it's interesting because both players get 2 for 1 in that situation and just end up neutral.
Yeah, which actually it happens a lot of the time where you're like, you can fall into the trap of if I... This is like a general thing, but if I quest, maybe I get 2 for 1. But a lot of the time, if you quest, they can 2 for 1 you to get 2 for 1 back. And like in these panels, it's often better to be the one that quested instead of the one that has to react. Not all the time, but it's more complicated than just, oh, I don't want to get 2 for 1.
Mm-hmm. And we see that play out almost exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this is... If they have the Tinkerbell, I would assume they always do this play. It's still a very good play for them, but...
How do you feel?
I hope they... Wait, they quest with Smee. I think I'm happy about that.
Oh, I think so too. How do you feel as the Ruby Amethyst player now playing against Amethyst Steel and not seeing any early Jafar shift targets? Are you feeling pretty safe?
Yes. Honestly, if it doesn't go into the shift Jafar stuff quickly, then I think we should be... Like, the longer we play this game on without them doing it, I think the happier we are. Because if without that happening, our deck's just a better deck.
Mm-hmm.
And Maui is an absolute unit in the matchup. 2 for 1's basically everything. We have more card draw than them. So it's also like shift Robin Hood wheel is something, or shift Tinkerbell wheel. This would be very annoying, but
yeah,
doesn't look like they have access to it.
And once again, like the longer this game goes on, the more we can mitigate the card disadvantage or card advantage the opponent would get off of doing an early wheel, because we're able to actually play out more of our hand.
Which is why we play for tempo very, very heavily. This turn's interesting. could just set up 2 Mauis, but then they're both damaged, somewhat playing into AoEs, which the ink decision is kind of interesting.
I feel like I'm trying to think if our opponent has like reasonable ways to deal with this location if we get it down in the next couple turns.
I mean, it's just more Wise of the Titans, which would be fine, but the only issue, I guess, is I'm not sticking a character into it immediately. It's not like it accomplishes anything right now. But also, I really want to. I think I want to play 1 second Tinkerbell, so I really don't mind taking this trade.
Yeah.
And yeah, if I'm taking this trade, then developing a Maui without any exotic characters is not too much fun. So I think it is actually the castle, and probably Inca Maui.
That makes sense going into turn 6. I think that if we dropped a Maui and the opponent did have a Tinkerbell, we would take a game where we were, I think at this point, very decently far ahead, at least in terms of tempo and board state, and that could shift where this.
Yeah, and then suddenly Tinkerbell would
Yeah.
do a lot, setting up the kill on Maui and killing one of the Mauis.
Yeah, and this is the tech card that the opponent has to deal with our locations, but ultimately they trade up on a single ink. Like it's not too bad for us.
Yeah. So there's some value in trading it off now, but it's also not like, I feel like most of the most of the gray purpleists don't even play bounce package. So that's why I don't really care. In the Ruby Amethyst Mirror, I would value killing that a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. In the Ruby Amethyst Mirror, the deck has opted to take out. Some decks actually don't even play Maleficent. They've opted to take out the old draw engines, and now the draw engine of the deck is mostly just the rabbit plus Madam Mim snake, Madam Mim fox, just bouncing it back and forth.
Yeah, it's just the rabbit that gets bounced all the time, and it's extremely important to find. And this is completely fine. Like, we cantripped on both of those cards. They didn't. It's only annoying that we don't get to sing Friends, which means I think we just have to hardcast it, ink something, and play Maui.
Yep.
I would love to get this book down. 2 Rise of the Titans gone. Again, I don't think this hook. I guess now that we know purple second color has a little bit more value because it can help us remove locations.
Jafar as well, right? Give our Maui evasive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And it's the second hook, right? So I think it's reasonable to keep it. But there's arguments for both of these inking decisions.
Yeah, the Fishhook is a card that I've been very impressed with in set 3, but very much is a question of how many do you play in your deck, because you pretty much never want to draw multiples of them, at least at one given time, and it's just, it can be such a bad top deck.
Yeah, it's a card that's, honestly, I ink it a lot, but when I do play it out, it can completely change how the game plays out.
Nice turn. Nice draw, I think.
Yeah, it's like they definitely are just setting up for Shift Jafar, right?
I think so. I mean,
So
that would be the ideal.
I think we are getting rid of the hook
I do
and
too.
just playing Spellbook.
I think the tempo of this play is just, it's hard to let it pass us by. Just the Madam Medusa clearing the Jafar, we get our book down. And it's like getting this book down is actually, it's just really powerful if we do end up getting wheeled as well, because we get that persistent advantage in the form of an item on board. And if our opponent trades a Rise of the Titans into this book, it feels kind of bad when you put book in your deck. You have one book in your deck and like, this is my win condition versus these like but it's just it's a almost equivalent trade. The book is uninkable, yes, but Rise of the Titans is a 3-cost action that can't be sung, so it's like, it's whatever.
Yeah, also, a lot of the time you're already gaining a lore before that happens. Okay, so now we're still very slow in racing them, but I think we just have to go as fast as we can, so I much prefer this on the board. I think they were ink screwed, and now they drew friends, played it out, and inked. So I think it's somewhat likely for 7-cost Jafar to hit play next turn. And if that happens, I'm somewhat inclined to still be prepped that. So honestly, that's a decent reason to just hold. So I think I just hold.
My inclination would be to hold as well, because they telegraphed the Jafar. I think they inked
Also-
the Jafar as well, just to keep in mind as we whittle through the copies in their deck.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Really don't have access to much here, but at least the spellbook's pressuring somewhat. It's like, because now wheel is a much better play for them. So I'm a little bit more inclined to at least ink something here. But at the same time, I'm so low on hand size. And if I do quest with Medusa, my entire board's dead. So I think Medusa doesn't quest. I play Merlin Crab, maybe. And maybe I ink Rafiki. And then we pass. So this is the stuff we have to figure out.
Yeah. I would like to. I think we're incentivized to put them in a position where we get as much advantage as possible off this possible wheel. Because, like, I don't know, our hand doesn't have any card draw, so it's like, I kind of want them to wheel us at this point. Yeah, I think I would just play out this hand.
Play it out entirely, Yurt?
That's the question, is right? You ink the Rafiki or not? Probably
Yeah.
not, because you have, like, so much AoE removal. You probably just ink the Rafiki.
Yeah. So I guess they used one grab your spot, but it's still reasonable to play around.
Yeah, I think that's
More grab your spots.
There's just a second Tinkerbell sitting on board.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to remember inks.
I don't remember all the inks. At least when not playing in a tournament.
Yeah, there's definitely one Rise of the Titans, Friends on the other side, and Jafar that was inked. Okay, there's the grab your sword. So
The smash just now. So at least I'm happy I didn't play out the Rafiki.
Okay, double grab your
Double
sword.
grab. So now it's a little annoying that basically I don't want to be prep this, but if we get wheeled, I'd much rather not have the Tinkerbell on board. But I think if like Tinkerbell sinks wheel, they have a board big enough that we probably have to be prep that anyways, and we just have to hope post wheel that we draw into another be prep, and then now we just stall and probably be prep next turn if it doesn't get wheeled away.
I'm in line with that. It's a tough decision though, like a very, very tough decision.
Yeah. I think this is the best way of playing towards our outs. I mean, that just means they don't have a wheel. And considering that, I don't think I need to be doing anything here. Like, I don't need to remove this yet, because my follow-up's still so bad that I will be in a bad position again. So it's just either I pass or I just play out the gym.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think. Yeah. What kind of situation do you feel like you're in if we pass here, our opponent double quests, and then passes back? Is that ideal or? Because that's the play. I mean, it's obviously dependent on their hand, but that's the play I would probably make because they kind of have to.
Yeah, it's definitely a play they can make. I think personally I would like to gym here, and it's like good enough so that they feel like maybe they have to commit more. Because if they don't commit more, gym contests me. Maybe I find some Maleficent or Maui for Tinkerbell.
Yeah.
But I think we've used 3. Was it 2 or 3 Mauis? I think I inked 1, so we already used 3 Mauis.
Yeah, I think it's a good point though that if we don't add additional pressure onto the board, our opponent is incentivized to actually not commit to it anymore. Hopefully they hit ours. No, they hurt.
Yeah, I think they will always draw 2. Yeah, if they hit Jim here, it's GG.
Best case scenario.
Yeah.
We gotta play to our outs. Okay.
Okay, that's already much better.
That's nice.
Yeah, I think we sing it.
Yep.
And I guess with this hand, we should probably get the Jim Hawkins back into hand.
Yeah. The opportunity cost of that is 1 lore off the book, but yeah, I would
I'm not sure it is even that, because I think I'm inking.
Oh, you're inking the Madam Mim?
Yeah. The Fox Mim
Yeah.
doesn't have great value here. Like, the thing is, it can be a decent card in the next 2-3 turns. But still, our opponent has 4 wheels in their deck that they could draw into at any point in time. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, That's what we need.
We don't need the ink cheating, but I guess.
Yeah. A location is nice though. It is very, very nice here. Unless we
Yeah.
So if we meet like our third, I don't know if it'd be the third of the, I'm pretty sure it's the third Rise of the, no, it's just the, yeah, it would be the third Rise of the Titans. That would be a little frustrating, but we could.
Yeah. But this also puts them on having it.
Oh, that's good for us. We are back in this game. Oh,
I think we are close to winning the game. And I think I want this on the board for tempo. Also, at least it does reset the gem, which is nice. And then we split on the castles.
Yep. Just like that.
Yeah, so they didn't really get to do the Jafar stuff. If they did, we would be forced to play out our be prepared a little bit more on less value. Wouldn't be able to stall so much with it. But I think we would have still been able to fight off a few Jafars.
All right.
So we're playing against Sapphire Steel.
Sapphire Steel going second.
So against Sapphire Steel, Friends, usually with 1 cost 2 drop, in a lot of matchups I think Friends is keepable. Against Sapphire Steel, less so. So don't really, especially going second. So I can just like ramp into wheel. Even Maleficent is not great, but I want to develop on 3 rather than play Friends, and then seeing Friends doesn't matter as much after that. In this matchup particularly. Okay. I think the 1-drops could come in handy this game. And if they play Smee, Chernabog's followers can actually quest, whereas Rafiki can't.
Yep, because that's me. Will take
Same as the 1-3s. The 1-3s wouldn't be able to quest against Smee, because then the Smee drops to 1 and they're happy. If I decide I don't want to Mim. And I think if they don't contest it, we definitely want to not Mim and actually have multiple questers on the board to threaten them.
Yeah. I think in this metagame, I'm never looking back on the 1-3s. I prefer the utility-based 1-drops much, much more.
Yeah, me too. It's like I only play 1-3s if I want more than 8 1-drops, I think. So I'm playing Kuzco this turn. Next turn I could be playing Rafiki and this Mim, or the 3-cost Mim. I still don't really see myself playing the 3-cost Mim. Like, even on this curve, because I can pair this with a 1-drop.
Yep. I feel like that happens to me pretty frequently. The 2-cost Snake Mim has just, at least in this metagame, has been overperforming for me so much. And while I don't think you can cut the 3-cost Mim, because its bounce utility is so important, like you need the explosivity to clear locations often, it is just definitely the less impressive of the two for me so far into the Inklands.
Yeah, I think it always was the less impressive one, but maybe even more so now. There's a Winnie the Pooh. Love to Pinocchio that. Whenever this character quests, I put a card from your hand into your Inkwell face down. I usually don't face this card, because I play against like high ranked players, and they know that this is the inferior ramp engine.
Yeah, tell us what you really think.
So this is Madam Mim and Rafiki. So what are the cards that we want to leave up? I think I want to leave up a Rafiki, which means, and I still want to have as many bodies on the board as possible. So I just quest with followers, bounce it, ink it, and play Rafiki, bounce, and then also quest with Kuzco.
Yeah. Are you thinking about mitigating your board at all towards like a grab your swords at this point, in terms of like, putting out more 1-drops? So
a little bit, but honestly, if they grab your swords without singing it, I'm still fine. And I still every lore that we get matters so much in the long run. Especially because I can already see, if we get this castle down, and like we're getting very close with the goats already.
Okay, so this is actually gonna, like, this is the playline we were talking about here, but it's actually kind of fine for us because we can trip off of a single character. We also get to trade this Winnie the Pooh and then potentially drop a location, which I mean, they're not going to have an answer to outside of Rise of the Titans, which would, even if
Yeah,
they cast Rise of the
they-
Titans, that'd be fine.
yeah. So they would need to have exactly that, and
And even if
so
they did,
basically,
we're good.
the real consideration why this play was better was like, I would much rather be in this position where they grab your sword me, and I have my extra 1-drop dice for free than if I don't play the 1-drop and they just play Beast or Corksworth here. I think I would be in a much worse position then.
Yeah. And Blue Steel doesn't have fantastic. I mean, they have one of the quote unquote best ways to deal with locations, but outside of that card, they don't have great ways to deal with the location. Because they are. There we go. See a whole new world. Only a single differential.
And they didn't ink first either.
Nope. Which is really. Let's look at the graveyard.
Yeah. Must be uninkables only.
Oh, yeah.
Lucky Dime, Zeus, Gaston.
So this feels pretty good for us. This is like a huge tempo swing for us. Like this location is absolutely sticking. Oh, yeah, that was just a great turn cycle for us.
And honestly,
Do you
I don't see a reason not to just play more locations.
I know. I was gonna say, do you just stick this, stick the second location, maybe drop the Chernabog followers as well?
Yeah, the followers I think I'm also dropping like a dice to Tinkerbell, but
Yeah, but you can also attach it to a location, which is just hilarious.
oh, this turn I cannot.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So the question is what to ink. I think I do play this out. The one lore that I get if they don't have a Tinkerbell is crazy. And even if they play Tinkerbell, that already means they're not playing any Rise of the Titans.
Yeah, and we're like insanely far off of Maleficent. Maleficent isn't even that.
Yeah, that's the card I'm looking at inking, but it could be 2-cost Mim as well.
I like keeping 2-cost Mim
discarded 2
to just in
costs.
case we go late, which is hard with the locations. I know we're probably not going to. I like the fallback of being able to draw a million cards.
Yeah, it's like I guess right now I don't care about it at all, but I think the thing that the best case for this Madam Mim, please don't have 2, is where I draw into more goats.
They do not have the second one.
That was very important. I think at this point, we are actually just tempoing the Mim out and playing another castle.
Yeah. Another location is just devastating. And this is what's crazy. It's like in Lorcana, there are some cards like this. Rise of the Titans is literally built to deal with locations. It's like the anti-location card, but it's like if you think about the card from a fundamental perspective, it's really not that good. Like you actually just trade up a single ink in terms of cost, and like the tempo is virtually the same. So it's like you would rather
especially against that deck, that like clocks their turn quite a bit.
Yeah, you'd rather be the player playing location than the player casting Rise of the Titans.
Yeah, usually yes. If they had 2 Rise of the Titans, of course, that would be a different story. But that turn, like their best play was Tinkerbell against the Chernabog followers, but they really wanted to Rise of the Titans. And okay, we now see I guess we don't see it yet, but they might still have a Tinkerbell. So we're really playing around both of those cases with this play. And also, basically, if we were just playing board, they could just contest it, but we're playing locations. So they kind of have to like exert their characters. They didn't even challenge it yet. And then we can punish them with stuff like Maui. So I think we just Maui, ink this, and attach to the castle twice. Or to do different ones.
Yep, and then next turn, we just cast Be Prepared and win.
Yeah, they do need to be reeling into a few Rise of the Titans, yeah.
We've only seen the... Okay, maybe I'm thinking about a different game we played.
Oh,
That's all
we have a Tinkerbell. So they full cleared the board, but we still go to 17.
Yep. So now they actually need another Rise of the Titans, or we win instantly. And even if they do the Rise of the Titans, they're still going to lose the game.
Yeah. And if they reel, they only have resources for 1 Rise of the Titans. So I've never won a game off those locations this much ever.
I have also never experienced that. Not since like early set 3 when both decks were just trying to like be the first one to Jim Hawkins and nobody was playing Fishhook. But literally since then, I've never won a game.
Yeah, this was an exception.
Ruby Amethyst in this metagame. I'm super happy with it, to be honest. Like, I think that there's been some standout decks in set 3 that, you know, have really moved up in terms of power level and where they are on the tier list. Nevertheless, I think that Ruby Amethyst is one of the most well-rounded decks in the metagame, one of the most fundamentally powerful decks in the metagame. It just has, like, it doesn't have... I would ask you the question, like, what is Ruby Amethyst bad matchup? And I think that the answer to that would be a debate. And even if we were like, this is a bad matchup, the percentage of which it is a bad matchup would be relatively small. Like, it has game against everything. I think it's one of the best decks to climb with. It's probably what I would bring to a tournament, and it's really fun to play. Like, if you like that kind of thing.
It's like extremely well-rounded, barely has bad matchups. Even the bad matchups that potentially could have are debatable. I still think it really dunks on red-blue, but maybe there's a red-blue list that it doesn't dunk on, but it's the one popular deck that's holding back red-blue still. And it's also just extremely flexible. No matter what matchups you're expecting, you can probably try to twist your deck in a way where it would be better against those matchups. And it is a really flexible deck in its game plan as well. Like, it can easily shift from being the aggressor to controlling the board back and forth multiple times, even in one game.
In my opinion, if you're looking to climb on Pixelborn right now, whether it's on the normal ladder, you're looking to try to hit, you know, Platinum, Diamond, Masters, Grandmaster, whatever. I think this is where you want to be. A lot of the narrative post some of these more recent tournaments, at least at the time of this recording, has been, oh, look at all these steel decks rise up in popularity. Let's counter it with blue-red. This deck is very, very good against blue-red. This is the reason you don't play blue-red. So this is a very good place to be. The mirrors are very skill intensive, which I know is daunting at first, but it ultimately means that if you put the time in, you will win a vast majority of them, of those games. I think also, I don't know how much impact this deck will have, but if it did, if a lot of people flopped over to RA, or maybe there just is a lot of RA in your bracket, I think in a heavily RA dominated metagame, some cards in this deck may change, right? I do think that some of the more hyper control cards are extremely impactful in the mirror, can be hard to deal with, but ultimately this deck, the deck list that we're providing today is just extremely well rounded for the metagame that is currently showing up. But I could see a change in 1 to 2 weeks if RA gets sort of anointed as the best deck once again. Anyway, if you all enjoyed the deck tech, don't forget to hit subscribe on YouTube. It helps us keep the lights on and keeps these videos getting pumped out. We'll definitely get some more set 3 deck techs coming up. I'm personally looking at Green Steel. I think that Green Steel had this great narrative behind it in the first couple weeks, and it's cooled off a little bit. Still very powerful deck, but I want to revisit it because I think that if any deck at this point has a good matchup into RA, it might be Green Steel. So I'm excited to get back to that. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think of the deck tech, what you think of the metagame, what you think is the best deck right now. And we appreciate you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.